Hey guys, Ben Jelter here. Those of you who know me know that I really love using Clip Studio. It's one of my favorite drawing programs. So recently I found a program that's really cool that lets you make Game Boy games. It's called GB Studio. I'll put a link in the description. So I was messing around with that and then I decided that I'm gonna need to do like a bunch more pixel art if I want to make Game Boy games. So I messed around with a bunch of pixel art programs and they're really cool. But I was wondering if it would be possible to do pixel art in my favorite program, Clip Studio. And of course, the answer is yes. All you have to do pixel art in most programs is turn off anti-aliasing. But I wanted to make it have like a really nice workflow and have a bunch of tools that they had in other programs so that I could really use the program to its maximum potential. So I've put together a group of useful tools that you guys can use to do pixel art in Clip Studio. And I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of the tools that I put together and how to use them so that you guys can basically fully utilize this pack that I've made. So the first and simplest is the dot pen, which is basically a default tool in Clip Studio. It just makes a single pixel and you can use it to draw. If we go to the pixel bucket, this is a paint bucket that I've just optimized for pixel art. You can use it to fill and it's not going to do any weird anti-aliasing on the edges or anything like that. I made a new tool. Of course, you can just uncheck apply to connected pixels only in the tool properties of the pixel bucket to make this work the same way as the other paint bucket, but I made a second paint bucket called Replace Color, and I think that this is a really useful tool, and for me, in pixel art, I use it so often that it was worth it to just have it as a separate tool instead of a tool option. So it does exactly as described. I can just replace a color and it's going to replace it everywhere as long as it's on the same layer. So next we got some nice drawing tools. You can see I used one on this little troll over here, the Dither tool. The Dither tool just does a checkerboard pattern. It does a kind of a pseudo shading effect for pixel art. Then we've got the pixel spray. Pixel spray works just like the spray can tool in like MS Paint. If you're working in any type of format where it matters how many unique tiles you have, you should be careful when using the spray tool because it's going to create a lot of unique tiles because it's applying the pixels in a random pattern. But randomness can be kind of a hard thing to create by hand, so that's why this tool is pretty useful if you want an area that has a kind of noisy effect. So next I made this ellipse tool. The ellipse tool I think is really useful. I set it to snap to the grid, so once you have your grid set up, you can make like a circle or an ellipse. Sometimes these can be hard to figure out if you're doing them by hand. You can sometimes end up with some weird angles on your circles. And so, maybe it will help you get a good start on creating any type of circle or oval you need to make. The next one is the Lasso Draw, which is just a Lasso Fill tool with no anti-aliasing, but it's inspired by a tool that they have in A-Sprite, which kind of allows you to sketch out your scene quickly and easily. And it's the opposite of the spray can tool in that if you use this a lot, you're going to have less unique tiles because you'll see that since these are nice cleanly filled areas, each of these tiles in here is not unique. And so for that reason, if you make your art using something like this, it's probably going to be better optimized. I have this wand tool. Wand tool is also a regular wand tool, but with anti-aliasing turned off. Very useful for pixel art, and I recommend having it as a separate tool than your usual wand tool, just because if you go into your tool properties and turn off the anti-aliasing and then you forget that you did that and you go back to something that's not pixel art, you can run into some problems with having little jagged edges that you didn't realize were there. So to come back to this Lasso Draw tool, you can also kind of use it to draw lines. And you can even create some kind of cool textures by just going back over it over and over. So I think that that's like a really nice effect. And then the last couple tools are really dependent on having your grid set up. So I'm going to show you how I set up my grid. First I open the auto action window, and then I recorded an auto action. And the auto action, I went to view, grid ruler settings, and then I set up this grid the way that I wanted. It's each big square is 32 pixels divided into 4, so each little square is 8 by 8 pixels. So I set that up like that, and then I went to view, and then I went show grid. And then the thing that's cool about this auto action is that now, once it's all set up, I just clicked it and dragged it over here to my quick launch. And then I gave it a custom icon so that it looks like what it does. And then now when I click on it, you can see that it will set up the grid the way that I want and then toggle it on and off. So if the grid's not set up the way that I want, it's going to set it up the way that I want. And then it's going to toggle it on and off. So basically most of the time I just use it to turn the grid on and off. But it also saves me the step of having to set up my grid. Then I also added to the quick launch the snap to grid, which is, view, snap to grid. You're not going to want to have to click the menu to do that, so I made it a button over here and then gave it a custom icon. So if I have the marquee tool selected, you can see that now it's snapping to the grid. And then if I click this again, you can see now it's not. So since these tools are so dependent on having that grid, that's why I wanted to show you that. So I'm going to go to the copy stamp tool. And now let's say I go to this little dungeon door, and let's say that I want to have another one right next to it. I can go to the center of the square, and this is set up so that it's a square brush tip, even though it looks like it's a circle. So disregard the circle, imagine it's a square, but you kind of want to get the edges of it lined up with the square. It does not snap, so you'll have to do that by hand. If you have a different tile size than 8 by 8, you'll want to come into the tool properties and set the brush size to whatever your tile size is, like 16 by 16 or whatever. So I can click the Alt button, and it's going to select the reference point. And then I can go to the new tile, and I also need to line it up with the grid. I can click down, and then I can just draw, and it will clone everything. I just have to make sure that I fill the entire tile, which isn't too hard to do since it's a square brush tip. So then I might decide, oh, I forgot to do this little light underneath, so I can hold the Alt key here, click down and drag across, and there we go. So that's really useful. There's a lot of copy pasting in pixel art, so that should save you a bit of time having a clone stamp type tool. You could even make it like, if I made this 16, then I can just select the center there, and I can just tap once to move the whole door over. And then the last thing I want to show you is the copy move tool. It's a pretty great tool. What it does is, if you make a selection and then you use the copy move tool, you can just move everything you just had selected. And you can see that it doesn't make a new layer or anything. I didn't just copy paste. It just moved those pixels while leaving the original pixels, which could be really useful. Like, for example, if I wanted to make this pillar taller, I can use the copy move tool over and over again. You can see now I can select these pixels, go back here, drag them up. And you can see it allows really quick pixel art manipulation. Okay, so that's it. That's basically all of the tools. Hope you like them, and I hope it encourages you to try doing pixel art in my favorite program, Clip Studio. All right, have a good day, guys.